And everyone should know that water and electric motors do not mix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how well totally enclosed they are.
Turn off the breaker.
Welcome to another INYOPools podcast, your go-to source for everything pool equipment. Whether you're a seasoned pool professional, a DIY pool owner, or just diving into the world of pool maintenance, we've got you covered. In today's episode, we talk about variable speed pool pump motors, focusing in on what they are, how they work, what are their pros and cons, and finally, if a variable speed pool pump motor could be right for you.
Take it away, boys.
Hey, welcome back to another INYOPools podcast. Today we're going to be discussing variable speed motors. First of all, what are they? Why make the switch? How to select the right one? We'll talk about installation, programming, and then we'll give our opinions on the different variable speed options. So with that said, let's just jump right into it. So what are variable speed motors?
So a variable speed motor is an energy efficient motor. It's typically 6-pole, permanently magnetic driven. It varies in speed. You can run it from 3/4 of a horse all the way up to whatever the max horsepower on it is, and anywhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
That's the glory of a variable speed compared to a 2-speed. 2-speed, you have high and low, and there's nothing in between. So typically you run a variable speed. You can run it at lower speeds, longer durations, or you can have multiple set schedules on some of these variable speeds that allow you to do that. You can set it to run for a few hours at 1700 RPMs, a couple hours at 3400 RPMs for a cleaning cycle, and then have it dumb back down to a lower RPM, and that's where your energy savings kind of fits in. I will say apples to apples with a regular motor. If you were to run your variable speed, same horsepower, same hours, it's still 50% more efficient. Just because, like I said, it's a 6-pole motor instead of a 2-pole motor. So it takes less energy to move that motor around.
Yeah. So if we're thinking about, if somebody's thinking about making a switch, the number one reason is energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess another one would be it's much quieter, especially when you go into the lower RPMs. I mean, you can't even hear these things running once you go lower.
Totally closed.
The only time I've ever had an issue with that is I installed one once for a guy that was hard of hearing, and he said the frequency actually bothered him, and I was like, I can't win.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do there for that one.
All right, so we got energy efficiency, the noise. I guess they're nice too if you're not sure of your feet of head. It's more flexible, you know what I mean? If you're trying to achieve a certain gallon per minute, you have more flexibility with a variable speed than you do a single speed or a dual speed.
Agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially if it's a replacement variable speed motor, you need to make sure you can get a 2.7, or actually that's the old version, like a 2.2 Evo V Green motor, but if you're replacing a 1 horsepower uprated motor on a super pump, it's only going to have that 1 horsepower impeller. So you got to remember, if you want to have that high end flow, you probably want to change the impeller, because if you have a 2 horsepower variable speed and you have a 1 horsepower impeller, if you're at 3450 RPMs, you're only pushing 1 horsepower worth of motor. Mm-hmm. So you always have to always remember that. So if you want to maybe consider running it on a lower end, or if you're probably going to run it on the lower end of RPMs all the time, maybe consider getting a larger impeller just to have a little bit better flow rate on 1,000 or 1,200 RPMs. Just kind of remember that, because if you run it at 1,200 RPMs and it's a 200 or a 2 horsepower motor and you have a 1 horsepower impeller, you might as well just be taking mouthfuls from a hose and spitting into the pool.
Yeah,
it's not that much, but yeah, it's just something to consider.
So how do you go about selecting the right variable speed motor replacement?
Yeah.
What specifications are you looking at? How do you get them the right one?
size of the pool, gallonage. You want to look at the size of the pool, gallonage.
Like Matt was kind of hinting at, is matching it up compared to what your horsepower on your current motor is. I mean, you can't go wrong.
Like whole pump or just
just the motor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when you're making a switch, if you got a single speed motor that's dead, and hey, you're switching to a variable speed, what do you need to look at?
You just need to know basically the total horsepower, and then the next part is the frame.
Yep.
So if
The
it's
flange. Yep.
flange frame, it's either going to be like J frame, which is round. Then you have the Y frame, which is square, which is the, I don't know why I forgot that. And once you have that, you have the total horsepower, which is 1.65. Then you have the flange or the frame. You would then go to either the part schematic, which you can find on INYOPools.com. Let's say you type in Challenger parts. You go to the Challenger page. You need a 1.5 horsepower motor with a Y frame. There are two options for the Evo. V green is going to be either the 1.3, too low. You have the 2.2, it's too high. But the Mama Bear option, just right, that's a 1.65 EVQ 165. There we go. They make it easy.
Yeah, so you'd want to go with the same total horsepower or higher.
Yeah.
You don't want to go lower.
Equal to or greater.
Matchup.
Yep.
Is that, no, that's not the Gator mount. I can't remember what the...
And even if you went with a higher horsepower than what you have, and you were afraid that this goes for pumps and everything, you were afraid that it was going to be too much for your pool, you don't have to run it at the max 3450 RPM. You can step it down and run it at a lower RPM and have a little bit more flow than what your last pump or your last motor was, but then you just set it or try to figure out what you want it as the max and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you can cap it on those, right?
Yeah.
Like you can set it, hey, don't go above 2,800 RPMs.
Most of them have settings that you can cap at.
Unless we'll start talking about the presets and
unless it's the Evo, because the Evo you have set schedules that you can set it at.
You don't really get an option. They're not really user friendly as far as the way you want. They're already preset.
I think they're super user friendly.
I think they are.
Let's fight. I like it just because it's kind of a weird thing just because it's a single button operation type situation, but like the old the ECM series, they had so many openings for moisture to get in. Like they especially the 2.7, they had the tactile like calculator buttons on those. Like there's so many, you had to replace those boards or the interfaces so much where it just feels like, or the LCDs just went dead because people either broke off the lid or forgot to close it for 6 months, and now you just can't see anything. So I understand, like it kind of takes away the Android user type thing where I can do whatever I want on this because I got all these buttons and whatever. I also just like the fact that, press, done, walk away, hands off. Jackie Chan exploding behind you. Hopefully not.
Once you look at them and you actually understand how they work, they're pretty simple on how to program them. The reason why I like them is because they're a good, cheap intro variable speed motor, and there's some states that you just can't buy single speed motors anymore, and those people need options too. So I'm glad that we're starting to come out with options for people that can't put in a single speed motor.
Those states, California, and then New York just started with that too. So if you're in one of those states, familiarize yourself with variable speeds.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be more states that follow behind.
Yep,
that's just how it goes.
Yep,
they've all followed behind. It's just not enforcing replacing motors. They're enforcing buying new pumps. Every state's grandfathered that in because I know most people aren't going to go out and replace the whole pump when you can just replace a motor when there's really nothing wrong. Just California and New York are the only ones that are really struggling and telling people you have to get variable speed to replace.
So as far as installation, are they any more difficult to install a variable speed versus a single speed?
I don't think so.
The wiring.
Well, the wiring is going to be actually
it's simple.
Yeah, it's on top instead of in the back, so you're not fighting holding up a motor. A lot of the time, you could just sit there, put the motor down, and especially with the V green. Sorry, I keep hitting that. You just hook it up into the side of the box, and everything's up top, and you're working.
But isn't it like an auto switch in terms of voltage, or do you have to switch like the dip switches on that?
So on the V green, you don't
Most of
have
them
to.
most of them are 230
As long as-
across the board.
Well, if it is 230 or 115, a lot of them you can just you just set it up. It's got L1, L2. L2 is typically your neutral line,
Yeah.
and L1 is typically your power line. So you just plug them into that, and I think there is no switch in there to switch it over like the old school motors with the.
It's something that's unique with the V Green.
Mhm.
Is another thing why I liked is because it's kind of the whole dummy proof type wiring things where you just put the wires in there. It doesn't really matter about voltage. The only weird quirk about the V Green is that if you have a 2.2 horsepower and you hook up 115, it will accept it, but it will top out at 1.65 horsepower.
Oh.
So at least that's what it was when it was first introduced a couple of years ago. I don't think it's changed. It's kind of similar to the 2 horsepower single speed motors. Once it got above 1.65, like a uprated 1.1.5 or a full rated 1 horsepower could do a dual voltage, but once it gets above like 1.85 horsepower, it switches to 230 only. And I think that's kind of like the similar thing. I'm not sure if that's the law of affinity. I remember when we first started in pools, or when I first started in pools, I can't remember. Oh, that's the thing where in terms of like RPMs, it's not a smooth curve or something when it comes to flow rate. I remember the Century rep telling me that about the law of affinity, and I think he said it in person, then he also sent it to me in an email, and both times my eyes just unfocused because like I don't know what you want from me. I don't know. I'm like, I didn't go to science school. Don't tell me these. Once you say law of, I'm like, unless it's Murphy's law, I don't know. But yeah, that's why I like the V Green Evos. That the voltage is kind of dummy proof. You just have to make sure that if you want the full thing out of the 2.2 horsepower, that you have 230 available.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are some of the things you need to remember when you switch to a VS motor?
Shaft.
If you're going from a single, for installations, you always want to replace the shaft seal and go with the heavy duty one.
Yeah.
It's only a couple dollars more, and why not protect?
You should always put the heavy duty
Yeah.
one. Even if it just regardless, you should always put a
makes
heavier
sense.
duty
A
one.
couple bucks now saves you a couple $100 later.
Yeah.
That's and everyone should know that water and electric motors do not mix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how well totally enclosed they are.
Turn off the breaker before install.
But yeah, I mean, other things that would
Flow
thought of
rates.
is, if you have a salt system or a heater, there is a minimum flow rate through there. So you may not be able to operate your variable speed on its lowest setting. You might have to play around with it a little bit
Until you
and
find,
see what that minimum
to
level
find out what
is.
that sweet spot is and how far you can go down in the RPM tree before it cuts off.
Yeah, and on the same token, it could be too much flow. Like if it's high flow, a heater may shut off. So
Yeah, heater doesn't want too much flow, or else the water doesn't have enough
Right.
time to actually attain the heat as it's going through the heat exchanger.
So that's something to keep in mind when you're installing it and programming it, is to kind of play around with the speeds and make sure everything's still running smoothly.
Yep, because we do get people that's the first thing they say, oh, my salt system's getting a no flow. Do you have variable speed? Yep, try turning it up. It's probably in low speed right now. And so they do, oh, yeah, it's working now.
And you cannot run it at 1500 RPM for 8 hours a day and expect it's going to do what your last pump did for 8 hours a day.
Because it's pools still go with the whole premise that you still need to get all of your water in your pool through your filter. And I tell people at least 1.5 times. So if you got low RPMs, you're not going to get all that water through.
Lower the RPM, longer duration. Higher the RPM, shorter
And
duration.
if you're going to use it, always remember, I tell people between 10 and 2, you want to run at high RPMs because that's the peak time of the day. That's when the sun's at its highest. So you really want that water moving at that point. It cuts back on evaporation. So, but after that, from the morning till 10, from 2 to whatever you want, you can have it at whatever the setting is. But just keep in mind, we were talking before about your cleaner. If you see your cleaner's not moving, don't worry, it's probably you're in a lower RPM and it just doesn't have enough pull to move it.
That's another thing,
Especially suction cleaners.
is with these variable speed motors. If you have it adjusted for a medium speed for your cleaner to run, if it kicks onto a higher speed, it's going to run faster and it's going to wear your cleaner out a little bit more. So it can save you in the aspect of if you run it, like say you set your first 2 hours up for a high speed for cleaning purposes. If you adjust your valves and everything to that high speed, whenever everything goes to a lower speed and that cleaner's barely running, it actually can save some wear and tear on your cleaner as well. So it can have an opposite effect if it's running too much as well.
Yep.
So.
And you can always adjust your cleaner because most cleaners have an adjustment. I know the MX-8 has the one wheel that's got a yellow little peg on it that if you count it off, you're supposed to get between 20 and 25 rotations in like, I think was it 20 seconds or something like that. And then you'll know you're in the, so you always want to maintain that. So you know that at least you're not, like, you could turn it down so you're not over stimulating the cleaner and it will break.
And suction cleaners usually come with a one of those
gauge.
like the pressure gauge thing. So like Rob was saying, when you install the pump, you're going to be out there fiddling with it anyway. So might as well just go through a couple of tests to see what is kind of the low end in terms of getting your cleaner to work properly. And then also just have that marked down somewhere. You can mark it down in your phone just to see, like, just to make sure, okay, this RPM is good enough for your cleaner. This RPM is good for your salt. This is for your heater. Also, if you have all those things on your pool, may I borrow some money? Those are some nice, that's a nice pool. If you got a suction cleaner, you got a pool heater. Oh, and solar heaters. You're probably going to have to put it on the top end to make sure it can get up on the roof.
Pump too. You want to make sure you got solar. You want to make sure you got a high head versus a medium head.
I've had a few people where they'll run it at a high speed, and because it's a constant flow, it can actually go down to a lower speed on the solar for solar heating.
Once gravity starts to...
Yeah, exactly.
Once gravity gets going.
And it actually is more beneficial in that it's going through those tubes slower. So just like the concept with a regular gas heater or electric heater, the slower the water goes through, the more it's going to heat up at one time. So
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we covered variable speed motors pretty well. With this podcast, we don't know yet whether it's going to be residential people listen to this or people in the industry.
Yep.
If you're in the industry, or we do have a commercial department that you can reach out to for help. If and like property management groups, hotels, what else, YMCA's. We can take care of
a pool,
multiple pool types. So whether you're residential pool owner or you're just in the business around pools,
half pool will travel.
Yep.
We'll come to you. What do you want?
That's the thing when you're dealing with a variable speed. Do your homework. If you're still having on the fence, like say, you can give us a call, and we'll help you through it. Because every pool's needs are different. Because some people don't have the heater, they don't have a cleaner, and that kind of that we could take all that in consideration when it comes to picking the right variable speed for you. Because you definitely, if you got all of those things in your pool, you definitely want to go a little bit higher than what you have.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but I love talking about variable speed pumps.
Yeah.
So if you have any issues or any questions on how to program and stuff like that, I'm sure Dan is too. We were both technicians, very well versed in the variable speed realm. We're constantly putting out that content too. We have a few how-to guides right now, and we're going to continually work on them.
Yeah, I would suggest if you're on the fence and you can't get through to anybody, or you're just doing your research, do watch the videos starring the world's famous hand model here.
Hand model.
You might notice these hands. Yes, you will see them in quite, and they're very informative. And I think that if you're really on the fence, because variable speeds are not a small purchase by any means, and if you're serious about doing it, then I would definitely do your homework, because you don't want to go into it, not knowing everything that is involved with it, and what they do and what they don't do.
All right. So, yeah, if you have any questions about variable speed motors, head over to INYOPools.com. Give us a call, start a chat, send an email. We'll help you out. If you have any other topics you want us to cover, leave a comment, reach out to us, let us know.
We need topics.
And I'll leave Matt to do the outro.
Finally, my time to shine. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for listening. It's been an honor and a joy, except for when Tyler's here. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the INYOPools podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. For more pool tips and resources, visit INYOPools.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Links for both are in the episode description. We'll see you next time.